In today's video, I'm going to cover the whole entire market in terms of Dow Jones, Nasdaq, and S&P 500, including the economic calendar. Now, I do post these videos daily, so I highly encourage you to double check the latest video on my channel so that way you get the most up-to-date information. And before I get to the technical analysis portion, I'm going to go over the economic calendar. And for Wednesday, August 21st, 2024, at 2 p.m., we have minutes of Fed July FOMC meeting. In my opinion, the reason why the markets were going down is for anticipation for these meeting minutes that are going to come out for the following trading day. And the reason could be possibly is because even though the market is anticipating a rate cut in September, and whether it be 25 or 50 basis points, one of those are the two options the market is expecting, there's a chance that maybe it will be on the lower side, 25 basis point, but most not necessarily that, but I think the market is trying to protect for the off chance that the rate cut is not coming in September. The reason why I state that, and this is just my opinion, so please do your own due diligence and research before buying and selling. The Fed has never guaranteed that they're going to cut rate cuts in September. For example, the last FOMC meeting minute speech that Jerome Powell had right after the release, he didn't confirm when he was questioned if there will be a rate cut in September. He didn't confirm it, but at the same time, he didn't deny it. It seems more favorable that they will be cutting it in September, not necessarily from what he stated, but the essence of reading what he was kind of saying, potentially. He didn't really hint at it, but again, he didn't shut it down when he was questioned about it. So the market is anticipating a rate cut, and if the off chance that it doesn't come, then you could expect a decent pullback, in my opinion. Again, this is just my opinion, so please do your own due diligence and research before buying and selling. And I think the reason why it was down today was for anticipation for the meeting minutes that come out, again, at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And one thing to note also is at the end of the week at 10 a.m., we have Fed Chair Jerome Powell's speech at Jackson Hole Retreat. So the market will be waiting to hear that speech as well. But that is the movement. Now, in terms of the technical side, if we're looking at the Dow Jones, Nasdaq, and S&P 500, they are showing further downside. But again, I think these MACD lines, by the way, just in case you're new to the channel, MACD lines indicate we're in a bearish or bullish movement. And currently we're in the bearish movement. So technically, potentially more downside. But I think that's more being driven by the point of the 2 p.m. meeting minutes being released tomorrow. And then in my opinion, this is just going to be a general sense. I'm going to show more technical soon. But essentially tomorrow, basically, you could expect to go down and then potentially bounce off a potential support level either at 2 p.m. or sometime after 2 p.m. once the meeting minutes come out. And if it is favorable for the market in terms of rate cuts are coming, and if it's 50 basis points, I expect to break support resistance levels and so on and so forth. If it's 25 basis points, we're probably going to get stuck on the resistance levels, and then we'll see what happens day by day after trading days, so on and so forth. But till then, we'll see it and assess it. But first, I'm going to cover the Dow Jones, and then I'm going to cover the S&P and Nasdaq. So for the Dow Jones, mind you, we closed at 40,834 points. And this is upward trend resistance line dating back since 2021. So just in case you're new to the channel, just to visually show right about here, multiple touch points of resistance. And then there is support levels, but these are not in play. So this is April of 2024 and then 2021 support level. But again, not in play right now. We're more focused on this zone. So we do have a downward trend resistance line. It seems like to be holding true. We have multiple touch points, like arguably two right here, another one here, and then multiple consolidation resistance along the line. And again, indication is more to the downside. We could bounce off this upward trend resistance line dating back since 2021 as support potentially, which is about 40,450 points, give or take. And then if it gets crazy, you could expect to go between these two moving averages. I'm not expecting anything crazy for the time being, because if I think the Fed was expecting to do a rate cut regardless, and they know the anticipation of the market wants a rate cut in September, I think worst case scenario, in my opinion, the Fed would choose to do 25 basis points versus 50 basis points if they were not expecting to do it this soon. But again, nothing's guaranteed. Sometimes the Fed just doesn't care in terms of the short-term market reaction versus what could be the long-term repercussions, right? So there's that. So be in mind with that. But essentially the moving averages between that, and then there's a zone of support as well within that range I've checked earlier. It's about 40,170 points. 40,200 points, give or take, within that ballpark. So I would say anywhere between, because as you're dropping, these moving averages will drop too. So essentially anywhere between 40,000 to 40,200 points. And then in case you're wondering if this moving average will be in play, we can see a drop down here as well within that moving average price point, which is about 39,836 points, give or take. But this will drop as well a little bit. But essentially, in my opinion, what most likely will happen is we'll drop down by Wednesday until 2 p.m. maybe potentially at the 40,469 points, give or take. It just depends how fast we drop and when we drop, so on and so forth, because this upward trend resistance line. And then from that point at 2 p.m., medium minutes gets released, and we come back to this upward downward trend resistance line and test it again, which is pretty much where we closed at, about 40,834 points, give or take. But it's essentially on the higher end of 800 because we did close a little bit lower underneath the downward trend resistance line. So you could almost look at the 40,900 being the cap, almost. And if the rate cut is expected, more of the Fed pointing to the fact that the rate cut could be potentially 50 basis points, then I expect this downward trend resistance line to be broken. And then we could be expecting resistance at the 41,000 points, give or take. But now for the S&P, I'm going to be looking at ETF SPY, which is the ETF for the S&P 500, just different ratio. That's all it is. We closed at $558.70. And then essentially same thing. Expect a pullback until after the 2 p.m. medium minutes get released. So you could expect potential support at the moving average, about $556 and some change. Then there's a horizontal support level at 555 and some change. Drop down to potentially further levels where the moving average and horizontal is within the 550 and some change, essentially. And then as worst case scenario, in my opinion, 548 and some change for the S&P. After 548 and some change, as the worst case scenario, in my opinion, unless... Again, this is all dictated by what the Fed meeting minutes come out as. If they are indicating that there's no rate cut in September, then in my opinion, expect some big drops, unless they somehow spin it off as a positive news. But I don't see how, potentially, just because how much the market is anticipating a rate cut. But let's just say it goes to 550 and some change on the downside, or 548 and some change, and then it'll bounce back up, and then potentially maybe close at the 557 and some change, or go back up to the 560 and some change where it was a previous high. Now, the only thing is, though, this would be more if it's 550 basis points. I mean, not 50 basis points. If it's only 25 basis points, that's where I expect that potentially the 557 would be the top end, if that's the case. Now, again, the markets could be opening up to upside anticipation for good meeting minutes. I just think most likely will be heading down because MAC lines are pointing down, plus they're waiting for the MAC meeting minutes to be released. Now, for the Nasdaq, I'm going to be looking at ETF QQQ, which is pretty funny because it actually hit the upward trend resistance line dating back since 2010 and has been pretty much stuck underneath it. So if you're new to the channel, here's an upward trend resistance line dating back since 2010. Mind you, the market was still going up. It's just within this upward trend resistance line. Broke through in 2020 to 2022, came back underneath, tried to break it in March of 2024, and then did break it through as of recent. And that recent was when it spiked up right about here, which was June 12th, 2024, give or take. Now, we're still underneath. We got back on. We broke over it and then came back underneath it, and then tried to break through it again. Again, because of the meeting minutes and so on and so forth, I expect, technically, mind you, we closed at $480.26. You could expect the moving average to potentially cause support, potentially at $477 and some change. But then I think within this zone, we could potentially expect support. So within the zone is about $474 and some change, 473 within that range. So 473, 474. And if it's not too horrendous, and then it'll bounce back up, trying to test this upward trend resistance level at the 483 and some change. Now, if it's 25 basis points, maybe it'll just close at the 483 and some change after dropping before 2 p.m. and then after 2 p.m. go up. If it's 50 basis points, there's a chance that it could go up to essentially $487 and some change. I'm basing it off of this resistance level right about here, give or take about $487 and some change. Now, there are lower zones, but again, I don't expect some crazy drops unless the rate cuts are not coming fully. Then we could drop significantly. But if that's the case, I'll keep you guys posted day by day. But that's basically it for today's video. Thanks again for watching. I appreciate it. If you found it beneficial, consider dropping a like. It does help out the channel, so thank you so much for that. I do post these videos daily, so I encourage you to follow/subscribe if you want to be notified when I upload the next video. And that's it. Take care. Thanks again for watching. God bless and peace.